In the year the 1930s, Newcourt was a city in the hands of the gangsters. Crime became rule of the day, and citizens were scared, the police were powerless, and politicians were bought off. The top dog in the criminal underworld was Salvatore Zaza, aka the Godfather, and the head of the Zaza crime family. But things began to change. As a masked man emerged from the shadows, driving around in his car, the Silver Phantom, and aided by his partner, another masked vigilante, waged war with the city's gangland figures and other notable criminals. That man was Benjamin Benny Cohen, a city councilman, but to the city of Newcourt, he was known as the Masked Dragon. I'm Harrison Phillips, city historian and butler to the Cohen family. I'm writing a series of entries about the dragon's exploits and all his adventures, all the crimes that were committed in this city, and every scumbag he and his allies brought to justice. And in today's story, we see the team take down the city's biggest drug dealers, also at the same time bring Detective Warren into the fold, and he would join the team. And this is the Dragon's Wars. It was a cold night in the year of 1938. An abandoned warehouse where a local crew of Chinese gangsters were cutting up and selling drugs on the streets. The crew operated in a Chinese village. Well, that was the section of Newcourt that they tend to call that area. It was mostly populated by immigrants from Asia all over the region of that country. The section was dominated by the Asian mob. The head of the Asian mob was a man by the name of Chow Hayes, and he often did business with a capo within the Zaza crime family called Francis Franz Gotti. Now these two ran Newcourt's drug trade. Now just as they're about to load the truck, the Masked Dragon and the Demon came crashing in and broke it all up. Just as they took down all the gangsters, the police came busting in. It turns out it was a raid. The two vigilantes had accidentally come crashing in. They had to quickly make their escape as they were being led by Detective Warren, who kept firing at them. They had escaped. Now, as it turns out, Detective Warren was actually trying to take down the Masked Dragon for quite a few years now. He has been ordered to by his bosses, though, and we suspect most of them were in the Zaza crime family payroll. Because they needed to get rid of the Masked Dragon because he was disrupting business. And they thought they could try and take him down through the law. Over time, however, it grew to see the Masked Dragon and the Demon were actually like Robin Hoods, just as the people were seeing them as. He wanted to really go after the big gangland figures, so what he actually did, he pretended he was going after the dragon, only instead to be going after the mob. This way, he could be, that way pleasing his superiors by really taking down people he really see as the true threat to the city. Now one day Mr. Cohen came in to see Detective Warren on the crime raid, and after a conversation he realized he could possibly recruit him and join up with him, and judging by the conversation it sounded like he'd be more than interested to take down real criminals, and this then formed the idea that he could be a good ally. When Mr. Cohen got home that night and settled down for dinner with Miss Scott, with whom now knows of his real identity, as you remember from the previous adventure, he had asked about the idea of recruiting Detective Warren to join the team. She agreed he'd be a good addition, but the conversation changed to where the relationship will go once they take down the Zaza crime family. What's next? Mr. Cohen doesn't know and said he never really thought about it. Later the next night, the two masked vigilantes ambushed Detective Warren just as he left the police station and asked for help to take down the drug epidemic. He was startled at first as he saw no reason to team up with them, but then they suggested it was time to take down the real criminals, and from that point on he agreed. Something changed. I guess he just really wanted to hear someone was actually interested in taking down criminals because he felt he might have been the only policeman to actually want to take them down. He said that the Asian gang normally hangs out at an old Thai food restaurant and said maybe it's the best place to start. The two drove off and said to wait at home, but he had an idea of his own, as the two vigilantes would soon find out. As soon as the vigilantes got to the restaurant in search of the Asian gangsters, they unfortunately ended up in a gunfight. At the end of it, they interrogated the mobsters and asked where their boss was. He said they were at some old dojo where the boss and his partners were. They quickly got in the car and drove to the location. As soon as they got there, they saw Chow Hayes was there with Francis Gotti, being beaten by two men. To their shock, were actually in the employ of Salvatore Zaza. He was there too. It turns out he had actually outlawed drug dealing in his family, and was there to set an example that no one in his family were to deal drugs. However, he was willing to let others do it, but since Chow Hayes, knew too much about most of their family operation, courtesy of the partnership, Chow Hayes, well, he had to go. And just as that was happening, Detective Warren came in, tied up as he had been caught snooping around the place. Turns out he wasn't, going to let the masked dragon do everything by himself. He wanted to at least help. Realizing that they need to get rid of witnesses, even though he didn't like the idea of shooting a cop, he saw no other alternative. Just as they were about to do the unfortunate killing, the masked vigilantes ended up stepping in. At the end of it all, Chow Hayes and Gotti were killed, and Warren was saved. But the Godfather once again made another miraculous escape. At the end of it, they let Warren take credit for the moment, and as a result, $1 million worth of a drug operation was pretty much destroyed. Tony used the opportunity to interview him, which he agreed, and this story actually helped get Tony his job back on the newspapers. He was further on his path for redemption. Warren was promoted to captain and was placed in charge of the 114th Police Precinct. Later that night, the Masked Dragon invited him to join their team. They took him to their HQ, and there he met the team. Seeing what they were doing and all the information they had, he agreed to join. When asked why did he recruit him, he said he was simply a good cop. And that is the end of today's story. Please join us next time as the Masked Dragon and the Demon go up against the mob in the next adventures of the Dragon's Wars. See you then.